Hey, this is Chuck, and you are listening to Fans with Bands, the podcast where we talk to the fans and the bands they dig about life, music, and whatever the hell else we want to talk about. Today on Fans with Bands, we're talking to Ananda Murari. Check it out. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Fret Rescue. Located in Southeast Michigan, Joe at Fret Rescue has over 17 years of experience as a journeyman luthier. From basic setup to major repairs and restorations, you can put your trust in Fret Rescue. Contact Fret Rescue via email at fretrescue@gmail.com. You can also find them on social media by searching for Fret Rescue, @FERTRESCUE. That's Fret Rescue. Hey, this is Chuck with Fans with Bands, and I'm talking to Ananda Murari. Ananda, how are you?
Good, man.
Awesome.
Super nice to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome. Did I pronounce your last name right? I should have checked
You
before.
got it. You're
right.
locked in.
Good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it's like Ferrari.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I was thinking when I was getting ready to talk with you is that I love how Chance, put me in a line for the restroom at Gig when you were there, and we started talking, and I gave you my card, and you emailed me and sent me a link to your stuff, and then I checked out your amazing music, and I was like, wow, this guy's awesome. I gotta talk with him more. I was, I felt very much when I met you that you were someone that was earnest and very. I could even tell just from that little bit that you were passionate about what you were doing as far as music. So anyway, very grateful that chance encounter occurred, and happy that you're here on Fans with Bands.
Yeah, thanks for putting on such a nice event too. I think it was something my wife just stumbled upon, and that this was happening. She's like, "Yeah, it's a great networking opportunity," and it was beautiful. And yeah, just being able to see you like as this wizard with a camera roaming about this like awesome event that you set up. And then I got to meet the wizard, and I was like, wow, Chuck the Wizard. Let's go.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So, I usually like to start at the beginning of your journey.
Of time?
Yeah, of time.
Okay.
Yeah. So from when you were a tadpole, how did you become the musician that you are today, and how did you evolve into that?
Yeah, well, I fought my way through all the other sperm that was like trying to. No, yeah. So music. I didn't grow up in like a musical household. I grew up in a household where my father's like very much an appreciator of music, and so music was always kind of there. And then when which I sometimes felt like. Because I know some friends that like they grew up around music, and I'm like, oh, they had a head start, But no, my parents were always just extremely supportive and very like appreciative of music. And I remember we were Catholic when I was younger, and so we would be at church, and at this specific church that we were at, this drummer that was there was just phenomenal, and I became mesmerized by the drum set.
Oh,
and so like. Church would be going on, and I'd just be staring at the drummer. And so then my parents got me drum lessons with him. So I just started learning on the snare. I wasn't learning anything on the set, which I thought was kind of bogus at first, but it made sense later on.
Yeah.
And that was probably like third or fourth grade. And then I just started playing in bands, like at school, in school bands. Started a few garage bands with some friends, and music always just kind of became a thing. And then my dad had a guitar with an intention to learn, and he never did. And so then I got curious, and with the young supple mind of a sixth grader, I was like, oh, let's figure this out.
Yeah.
And started playing music, and then I had and so music just kind of started becoming my primary means of expression.
Okay.
And yeah, I remember listening to my grandfather gave me a random compilation album put out by Victoria's Secrets.
Oh.
And it was a compilation of like Bob Dylan greatest hits.
Wow.
From Victoria's Secrets. I don't know how that came to be, but And I listened to, I remember Don't Think Twice, It's All Right came on.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I feel like the doorway of songwriting opened up. Like I just realized a dimension of songwriting that, my dad's huge U2 fan.
Okay.
And so bands like U2, Pearl Jam, kind of things like that, I grew up around,
Yeah.
but I never connected to the songwriting. And then like Bob Dylan all of a sudden is like painting this portrait with words.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, that I felt like was the doorway. That and Bob Marley,
Oh,
like
oh,
just the
okay.
like kind of like the protest and the meaning of music also by those two artists.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those two artists kind of like opened the doorway for me. And then yeah, that's the very beginning. Um,
Excellent.
and then yeah, like to kind of bring that trilogy to a close, basically I was involved in music throughout high school, really trying to find my voice. In college, I started studying music and finally started finding my voice. I felt like I caught a groove
Uh,
no pun intended, but I caught a flow in college, and then I dropped out of school and I became a monk, and
oh,
then kind of got exposed to a whole realm of like sacred music, like
yeah.
how music is used in sacred
Yeah.
folk Eastern tradition. So that was kind of like
Wow. That's a,
that's why we're
yeah.
here now.
So that I think helps me understand because your music when I listen to it, a lot of um, I don't I hate to put I struggle with putting genres on things, but
Yeah, go for it. I'm still trying to
I
like,
also feel like it's important. And so
yeah,
there's an element of folk music, but your music, recorded music, doesn't even sound like that. But there's that storytelling, that kind of uh, that's part of folk music, and Bob Dylan definitely falls into that, where you're
mm,
mixing poetry and that kind of thing, and then when you're talking about Bob Marley, the kind of protest music and that stuff. But I'm
yeah,
thinking of like your music has an element of like philosophical thought to
yeah,
me, um,
yeah.
and do you feel like that came from I'm gonna guess from the time that you were seeking out you know the life of a monk?
Yeah, I think, there's there was a big moment in high school, especially as I, listening to Bob Dylan, Bob Marley, and then like branching into the whole oeuvre of like 60s
Yeah.
musicians and 70s, and
Mhm.
just like that whole explosion of music and thought, the like adoption of that culture, and then, reading a series of books that really had me start questioning a lot of things. I read this book called Perks of Being a Wallflower, which was like this bridge book
Okay.
that it was like a coming of age book where this young high school kid started reading all of these bigger books like The Stranger by Albert Camus, The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand,
Hmm.
um, Catcher in the Rye, like all these like very meaningful coming of age philosophical books. And so that like middle of high school, I started getting very existential and really just trying to understand what life was all about.
Yeah.
And I felt like the culmination of that was like meeting these monks and then giving myself to monastic life, which was just an immersion in philosophy for
Yeah.
many years, for 5 years
Excellent.
at least, of just learning and studying, conceptualizing things. And I had seen, I think there's an attempt from any kind of like spiritual tradition or religion. There can be this proselytization, this
Hmm.
like kind of preaching
Yeah.
that comes out about like, you know, I'm a big fan of Christian music. I'm a big fan of like Hebrew music. I'm a big fan of like religious music. And the religious music that I love most is not preachy. It's
Right.
not like, I'm not trying to shove a philosophy down anyone's throat.
Yeah.
So what my music is kind of what I strive for um, is like a it's like an honest processing of how do I confront these ideas
Yeah.
or these concepts? How do I approach prayer?
Yeah.
Um, how do I communicate these ideas not in a way that it's really just like for me. It's just
Yeah.
like how do I how do I like process this and then also like the hero's journey of humanity. So yeah, philosophy and just this kind of seeking really started in high school and it's just still continuing.
Right.
I would say like very much right now in my life too. It's a very much a new chapter, a renaissance as a father, as
Uh,
just like there's like so many different dynamics going on where a lot of my music, what I'm seeing, it's still that search is still going forward. So,
yeah, I would say that's yeah, for sure. Like the album, well, and the song, "Ripen on the Vine." You know,
mm,
just kind of those observations and doing like a look, seeing the world, seeing the natural world, but then also interpreting some of the thoughts and some of the observations that aren't necessarily about the natural world, but you're
yeah,
using it as a metaphor, which I think is very cool. Just
yeah,
that kind of exploration. So you definitely do feel then that the path that you were on, as far as a monastic person, is still there basically, even though you're not in that life. You're still treating um, your art in that way. Is that fair to say?
yeah. I mean, for me, like that's the primary purpose of art. Like art that I love, like explores human experience.
Hmm.
It also like explores those big questions. So I would say 100% like I I'm drawn towards hearing and consuming, and then also trying to create art that somehow speaks to that.
Yeah.
I view songs oftentimes as like these time capsules. It really allows me to look back. I think I was mentioning at the show at North Star, like I was reading in a journal. Maybe I didn't mention it at the show, but I have this old journal from like 15 years ago,
Yeah.
and I was reading just the thoughts of a 16-year-old me.
Yeah.
And so songs are kind of like that too. It like,
Oh,
but
yeah.
multi-dimensionally,
Yeah.
there's like a lot going on in a song.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like that's really a function of art is that philosophical processing, that human processing, um, all there in a sonic file, if you will.
Yeah. 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 So, do you hope that people, when they're listening to your music, are obtaining some of the those thoughts that that you're having, or is it just purely that you're hoping? I guess what is the main goal for your music? Do you want to like help the listener? Not help's not the right word, but
Yeah.
kind of show them something, give them a picture, or do you just want them to like sit back and enjoy the musical melodies and harmonies, and then if there's a message, they get it. If they don't, it's fine.
Yeah, good question. And I think it's probably like I said, like I had seen specifically in like the Eastern tradition that I had come up in, there's sometimes an attempt to make like spiritual music
Mm-hmm.
where it just felt very like disembodied and preachy.
Uh-huh.
And I don't feel like when I think of God, when I think of the absolute truth, I think of the most aesthetically pleasing, beautiful, wonderful, compassionate, loving like being, the source of all beauty and source of all wonderful things.
Yeah.
And so I feel like um, art is a great opportunity to reflect that, to
Yeah.
like demonstrate that. So a lot of what I'm writing it is really just for me. And then if people can resonate with it, and there's a language that they get to then put to a feeling that they've had that they maybe haven't been able to articulate before,
Yeah.
fantastic. And if, my love language is like people listening to a line, listening to a lyric, and like, oh, when you said that and you said this, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, you got me.
Yeah.
Like I love that. So
Yeah.
I love the dialogue. So in terms of a goal,
Hmm.
I would love to create dialogue, both like directly and indirectly with people, especially when it comes to some of these questions around life and
Yeah.
human experience and spiritual growth.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, develop dialogue.
Yeah. I think that is whether someone is, extroverted or introverted, I think that they definitely seek that. I know I
Mm,
seek that in the work that
mhm.
that I do. I want to put it out there, but I also would I love it when somebody says, "Oh, that's awesome," or more than just awesome, but they like express a feeling about either something I wrote or something an image I've grabbed. So I
Yeah,
definitely I feel what you're saying there because I feel like that's the key, right?
yeah,
If you can develop a dialogue with the people that enjoy your art,
yeah.
it's not just a one-sided thing. Look at my shit, it's more about like, yeah, tell me what you feel from this and share what
Yeah,
you have.
yeah.
I think that's
That's
awesome.
it's one of the most exciting things when you hear a new interpretation of something that you've written.
Hmm.
Um, like there's yeah, because again, like we were talking about the time capsule, like that a song is really much a multidimensional time capsule of a feeling, of a thought, of a process that
Right.
I'm moving through, and so then being able to hear someone else's interpretation of that is also
Yeah.
very exciting.
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
and enlivening because really it is like the human experience is ever expanding and we're unique and we're also very similar. And so those cross sections are very interesting to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit before we started recording about I went to North Star, saw you live, and we were talking about that song interpretation process because
Hmm.
you were playing with a guitar, just you, your voice, and a guitar,
Hmm.
whereas your recorded material has a lot more orchestration going on. You've got keyboards, you've got drums, you have a bunch of different instruments there. So you've got really richly textured music recorded and then to perform that live, it's more stripped down to just how it started. Basically, it was with the
Yeah.
guitar. So I'm curious, as far as your songwriting goes, are you thinking in terms of a particular theme or um, content that you're trying to develop around, and you build music that goes to that
Mm.
theme or idea, or is it more noodling around on the guitar? You find something that you like, some chord progressions, and then you build a song off of that lyrically.
Yeah, good question. It's always a question I'd like to ask other songwriters too, because I
Yeah.
think where I'm at in my I'm trying to create more of a discipline around songwriting,
Uh,
honestly. I think there are periods of my life that I've gone through where a lot of music is coming, and a lot of that comes from just spending time with the instrument.
hmm.
So I noticed songwriting happens a few different ways for me. One way is it'll happen either from a melodic idea or a some kind of yeah melodic foundation
Right.
that I sit with. So for instance, that ripen off the vine.
Hmm.
Excuse me. That was a riff that I wrote back in high school, actually,
Wow.
and it was different
Uh,
than what it is, but just that it's based on E. It's like just that E7 chord. So that was there back in high school, and it's become like it was like two different songs. At one point, it was a song. I had a band called her name was Koi Mistress, and it was kind of like a reggae funk kind of band.
Okay.
And that song was called Koi Mistress, actually, for a while. And
Oh,
it
wow.
never got like fully fleshed out and developed.
Yeah.
And then in college, I was like trying to write this song called Tie a Tie over that song. So that riff was just kind of holding on for a long time. So I have a few songs like that where like there's a melodic foundation. Sometimes, like throughout my notebook, I'll just have either ideas, lines, metaphors, or I'll just kind of free write a big chunk of something,
Uh-huh.
and then I'll start like putting it together, maybe on a riff that's floating around. So I'm kind of trying to develop more of a discipline around it because it
Okay.
is a little bit spontaneous at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how that unfolds
Wow, that's crazy.
currently.
Yeah, I was asking that question. Well, I've asked it before, but a different thought has come into my head related to it because I went to another show at the North Star
Mm,
recently on Saturday to see Annie and Rod Capps and their quartet,
mm,
and there was many, and so Annie was. They were basically breaking out a bunch of new music they haven't played for anybody,
yeah,
and sort of experimenting with it a little bit to see how it flies live. But she mentioned quite a few times that she's been in these different songwriting groups where you get a prompt, like a word, and
yeah.
then you build a song off of that. And that to me, like, thought, because I've anytime I've ever written music, it's always been the guitar.
Hmm.
It's never been, oh, I have this thought of some theme and I'm going to write music to it.
Yeah,
Um, but that prompting made me think, you know, I wonder how many other, songwriters do that. And it sounds like
yeah.
maybe you do a little bit of that because you have a notebook, you have some thematic ideas, or like you said, a long write out, and then you're going, oh, I think I have some music I can put to this, or
Yeah. Yeah, um there's a song on the album called You Give Me a Name. And that happened from a pretty much that was written in one go on a during COVID. I was a part of this online like creative collective. And so it was cross cross discipline artists, writers, filmmakers,
oh, cool.
musicians, and we would meet like once a week, and then we would break off during the week to have a project with one another. It
Uh,
was super cool. So
yeah.
this one specific meeting, a friend of mine who actually is the poet at the very beginning of the album, he does a little spoken word.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
So his name is Don Naraj. He's I think he's actually moving across country right now. He's like coming out to West Virginia, but um, he he led us through this whole writing exercise, which was I forget even if there was a prompt, but it was just essentially like a free write.
Okay.
So yeah, I definitely want to I definitely do some like prompt kind of stuff sometimes, but again, I think that's part of like the discipline of
Mhm.
songwriting that I want to instill a little bit more in my
Yeah.
process because yeah, I think there's something that prompt concept that you're talking about, that oftentimes comes from like an idea. Like I have a lot of things that I've written down recently just from conversations that I've had.
Okay.
Like, oh, I like that. I like that idea, or I
Yeah.
like that feeling. I've also had some songs recently that just come from uh, like it's like a spark. Sometimes songs will arise like that, where like I literally see this. And I was in Colombia, and I was sitting at we were up in this mountain near Medellin, and at this house, and all of a sudden this pigeon just like flies into this big window and
Oh,
smacks into the window, and I'm like, holy. And then just immediately that image, like a pigeon flying into a window, I'm like, oh,
yeah.
there's like something in that. And so
Yeah.
then I just started chewing on that for the last few months, and now I have a song called Pigeon. And that
Awesome.
so songs happen like that also.
Now I'm curious, does the pigeon have a good outcome or a bad outcome?
The whole song, it's like I do a few different uh metaphors. So there's a pigeon, there's a stray cat, there's a dog that's been left home, there's a camel in the desert. So the song is kind of about the what I often see of like trauma being trauma is a very powerful experience for
Right.
human beings because it's intense and all human beings have gone through it. And it's like a portal for us to grow. This is my
Yep.
opinion, my view. There's like an opportunity for growth there. But what I feel like often happens, it's like the over victimization. Like we can tend to like use my trauma as like a reason why I can't do
Can't do
anything,
something. Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's like it becomes like this, or it's like my trauma is my value,
Yeah.
when I feel like it's like a misappropriation of what trauma is actually meant for.
Yeah.
So anyway, the song's kind of about that. The
Okay,
pigeon
cool.
is like this representation of like flying into a window and then kind of like, because my concept was you're hearing all these, exotic birds of Colombia,
Right.
this, cascading through the mountains, and then you have this pigeon that kind of embarrasses himself. It's like,
Yeah,
oh shit, like
yeah,
I
I
flew
just
into
hit
the
a
window. It's like,
window.
yeah, it's like, so it's like you can either make that, you can make that story of like, oh, I'm useless, I can't, I thought it was a clear way through and I just smacked into the window, or it's like, yeah, what's the lesson? What's like the growth
Yeah.
edge?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. When
anyway,
you
that's
when yeah, when the trees and the mountains look too shiny, it's probably a window.
yeah, yeah, totally. Totally.
That's awesome. So I know that you've mentioned a few times when I saw you live, different places you've lived, and I'm
Yeah.
curious. It sounds like you've moved around quite a bit, so I'm wondering how much of the places that you've lived have influenced the music that you make.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say I've traveled a bit, but I've lived in Arizona, I've lived in Colorado, and then I've lived here in Michigan. So not
Okay,
a
not a
crazy
ton of
amount, but
living other places, but
yeah, I
traveling.
feel like I have much more transient friends, like I have friends that are far more transient than myself. But um I would say, yeah, it's interesting. I heard someone having another artist online having a conversation where you used back in like the 40s, 50s, 60s, you would have very locale specific sounds
Hmm.
because according to where you lived, you were exposed to certain music.
Yeah.
Whereas what's interesting now is like we're exposed to the entire world. It's like all there. So I feel like influence is dispersed like that.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I feel like more than locations, I feel like experiences
Okay.
and relationships have affected the sound that I have. Um, at least I don't notice. I may start
Yeah.
sounding much more Michigan now that I've been here for like 4 years. Like
Right.
there's like talking about genres. I've been trying to really like the new thing is you kind of have a statement like outside folk or
Oh,
alternative or
yeah,
like
yeah.
so I'm trying to come up with the
Yeah.
statement of my music and
Bluegrass adjacent.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
and that was I saw that in the little gig pamphlet. Like,
Yeah.
there's those great descriptions of all the different bands. So I'm trying to come up with mine. There's like an Ann Arbor indie folk.
Yeah.
There's like a sound.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think at this point at least what I'm conscious of, it's less the location and more like the relationships that I've had and like experiences that I've gone through.
Gone through. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So thinking of influences, I know you mentioned Bob Dylan early on. Uh,
Yeah.
Anybody else that really comes to mind, and Bob Marley, but anybody else that comes to mind that was influential to you as a musician and a songwriter?
Yeah. I think Jeff Buckley
Oh, yeah.
was tremendously like just hearing how he used his voice,
Hmm.
um, and the expressiveness of his playing. Jeff Buckley's definitely huge. Hmm. I mean, so many. It's like interesting because there's a lot of bands that I like now. I feel like sometimes when I think of this question, I
You think
always
of now as
it's
opposed to the
yeah, it's always kind of
past.
like there's always like a kind of presumption that it's like an origin of like what's like the origin of your influences like well it's
Yeah.
like changed over the
Yeah.
last 20
Yeah.
years a lot.
Yeah.
um
Well, you can go with current ones. That's fine.
yeah. There's a lot of yeah, I don't know. Someone I'm listening to a lot recently and he actually plays on the album, and I just kind of appreciate his approach to songwriting. There's this style of like road trip song or not road trip, that's not the word, but like uh just like what's the word I'm looking for? Like Jack Kerouac.
Oh
What's that
yeah, on the
book
road.
called?
On
On
the
the
road.
Road, kind of like On the Road
Yeah,
Americana
yeah,
kind of vibe.
yeah.
So he's this artist, Sam Weber, who plays on a lot of the first album, and then also on this new set of music that I'll be releasing in the first of the year. Um, Plays on a lot of it. He's an amazing songwriter. There's another artist, Madison Cunningham, who is also phenomenal, just like very maverick in her approach to guitar playing.
Oh, cool.
Um, and like also her songwriting is also very refreshing. Hosier is also just an amazing songwriter. I strive to have music or lyric that sounds good with or without sound.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like that you can just read it and it's like, oh,
yeah. That's cool.
it's
It's
lyrical.
yeah, it's lyrical. Yeah, you feel it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
So yeah, some of those artists are kind of
awesome.
floating around
That's
right now.
cool. Uh, Something I like to ask is related to first albums, and I know
Yeah.
you got the one
Victoria's Secrets.
compilation, yeah.
Yeah.
But what was the first one you actually went out to go get for yourself?
Mm. It's a little embarrassing. I think it was In Sync,
All
actually. That
right,
was like the first album that I bought.
nice.
It was like, I think I got In Sync and I got Coldplay. Those were like my first two albums that I bought. I bought them from Target,
All right,
I
excellent.
believe. I remember the day. Had a little CD player. Um,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
those were the first. It's so interesting now, right? Because you like don't buy albums anymore.
Yeah.
Although there's like still an art to putting an album together. I guess I've bought some records. I got myself a record player for my birthday last year,
Oh,
and
awesome. Yeah,
now I'm
that's
like,
you got to do it, I think. I'm old, so
yeah,
I still have the record player that I bought when I was in high school.
oh yeah,
And I kept my records. So like
oh
records
that's
went
awesome.
away and then CDs, right? So then I bought a ton of CDs and so I got like I don't know 700 CDs downstairs and then records came back and I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I'm bringing the records back." And so
I already have them.
this is awesome. I'm
Yeah,
going to add some more.
yeah, yeah. So I think that was my those were my first like albums that I bought, and then it very quickly like got into the realm of like Napster and things like
Oh
that,
yeah.
and
Yep.
so downloading and streaming music.
Yep.
But I remember specifically college, like that's where I really started discovering Jeff Buckley, Radiohead.
Hmm.
Um, I yeah, it's I I try and have a very wide experience. There's definitely music I tend towards, and there's
Oh, for
music that
sure.
I
For sure.
love. But I really try and have like a wide. So I've been this year specifically, I've been really getting into a lot of like world music,
Oh, all right.
like Gnawa music. A friend of mine went to Morocco and just hearing and experiencing Gnawa music, which is like it's like Sufi, spiritual, mystic folk
Wow.
music. It's
Wow.
amazing, and it's often with like these little hand
Yeah, those little
cymbals,
hands. Yeah. Yeah.
like this kind of like five beat. It's really cool. And then you have like a two string, forget what it's called, but it's like a bass, and
Okay.
that's like the melodic instrument, and then the voice is singing with it. It's like really, really cool.
Wow. I have to check it out.
Yeah, so Gnawa music, also trying like a friend had introduced me to like Turkish like psychedelic rock, which is like a
Really?
whole yeah. So I'm really trying to like I'm always trying to like refreshen my palette. My friends often tell me I'm like the source of new music for them because I just like find all this music. I'm like, you gotta hear this song. And
Yeah.
there's like the cynical people that are like, oh, there's no good music nowadays. And it's like,
I
no,
know.
there's a
Yeah.
lot. You just
Yeah.
gotta find it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know it gets hard because there's so much, right? But
Yeah.
it's definitely there. I hear the same thing, or maybe not necessarily here, but I will be with some friends that don't necessarily explore music anymore because there is a
Yeah.
point where a lot of folks just stop, right? And it
Yeah. I
typically,
got my bands.
yeah, yeah, it's like whatever you listen to in high school, that's what you're still listening to now,
Yeah.
and that's cool. I get
Yeah.
it. that has never been me. I always
Yeah.
wanted to keep listening to more stuff, but I still do have that core stuff, that break out there and made an album and go, yeah,
Yeah.
but
100%.
but yeah, I know what you're saying as far as, um, people getting stuck with that, and that
Yeah.
sometimes it's good to have a friend, that will say, oh, hey, check this Turkish music out,
Yeah.
man, you might dig it.
Totally.
That's
There's
cool.
there's two things. One, you just reminded me of the first like Iron Maiden song that I ever heard was Run to the Hills. I
Oh
had
yeah.
a neighbor that lived the house behind me from California. And like, so I was living in Arizona. That's where I was like raised. So
Okay. Yeah.
I felt in many ways there's like this dearth of culture being raised. So I was always like eager. So then this like cool guy from California, like he moved in and he shredded on guitar and his thing was Iron Maiden. And I had never listened to Iron Maiden and I was like a drummer.
Yeah.
And so I was like the first time like
Yeah.
like just the speed I needed
Yeah.
to develop in order to play this Iron Maiden song with him. But I was just remembering that. But yeah, there's another artist I've been listening to, Noah Lu, I think her name is. She's
Okay.
from Spain.
Oh.
Just this amazing guitarist and singer. A lot of it's in Spanish, but then she
Uh-huh.
has some songs in English. Are you familiar with Chris Thiele?
Yeah.
Okay, she does a song with Chris Thiele, also Jacob Collier. Are you familiar with Jacob Collier?
No.
Oh, you would like Jake. I mean, you might like Jacob Collier. He's like he's a wizard. He's a musical wizard. It's
Oh.
like very genre bending, very big production, like very musically complex.
Okay. All right.
But also like this weird assimilation of like pop sensibilities with like extremely thick music theory,
Oh
like
wow.
jazz music theory. Very, very like some musicians really love Jacob Collier.
Yeah.
Some people it's hard for them to get into him, but
Yeah. Oh,
anyway,
awesome. I'll have to check it out. Yeah, for sure. I love that. That's what I love. It's part of what I like about doing this kind of thing
yeah,
is that there's so, everyone has such wide variety of tastes. And so just getting turned on to different stuff, it may not be for me,
yeah,
but at least it's like, oh, I can go check it out. And
yeah,
that is, I mean, as much as I don't like streaming because I feel like the artists are getting ripped off,
yeah,
I do like it just for you know, so I can do 30 seconds or a minute or something, go, okay, that's cool. I'll go
yeah,
find their stuff and buy it if I like it. Or it's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, that didn't work. Okay, move on.
yeah. The exploration potential.
Yeah.
We should exchange playlists, Chuck.
Oh, yeah.
We should we
Well,
should just share some like
my,
music. I'm
yeah.
open to it.
All right.
If you said you were in a
I
metal
tend to be,
band.
yeah, I tend to be, that's still my love.
Yeah, totally.
So,
Did
yeah,
you ever get into like industrial metal from Germany?
not a ton. Like,
Okay.
I was more into like thrash and then got into
Okay.
like death metal, melodic death metal, and
Got it.
yeah.
Got it. Okay. I had a buddy that was really into industrial. So
Uh-huh.
there was a band that we would listen to together, Eistrasende Neubauten, which means
Oh.
destroying buildings.
Wow, awesome.
It's a very like very industrial German metal
Now,
band.
I'm gonna have to check that out because a friend of mine who's a brewer, Chris Thompson, he's the brewer up in Marquette at
Yeah.
Cognition Brewing.
Yeah.
Um, he's totally into like industrial and dark wave and some other stuff, and yeah, so I'll have to check it out and see if
Yeah.
he may
Eistrasende
listen to it.
Neubauten.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were one of the bands we used to hear all the time. Um, yeah. I
yeah,
had a
for
buddy.
sure we can do that.
That would be great. I would love to be exposed to like more thrash because I've like definitely listened to a lot of punk, metal, thrash music like that. I've had a lot of friends that have been really into metal.
Uh-huh.
Similarly, I had a friend that lived as a monk also, like myself, but then his thing was like black metal and death metal.
Oh
And
yeah,
so he's produced a few like metal albums where he's just singing Sanskrit with like a metal growl and
really?
he's like chanting Sanskrit mantras over black metal riffs. It's insane.
That
It's
is
totally
awesome.
insane.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, because I do love some atmospheric black metal as well. So
Yeah. He'll just like he's like yeah, he's just chanting Sanskrit poetry over black metal. It's pretty wild.
that's awesome. Um, So, kind of along those first, what was the very first show that you went to?
You
Concert?
too.
Really? Oh, well, your
Yeah,
parents were into it. Yeah.
my dad was a huge fan. He's seen you two probably like 17 times.
Wow, awesome.
And so then that was our first show. I think it was the Beautiful Day tour.
Oh, cool.
So because yeah, I remember when that album came out, me and my dad went at like midnight to the record store to like grab it early.
Yeah. That's awesome.
He's like a big fan. So that was our first show that I went to. And then I think second show was maybe John Mayer.
Oh,
Um,
awesome. That was a guy that totally like, so I'd heard his more pop, music. And I saw him on Crossroads with Eric
mm,
Clapton's Crossroads.
oh yeah.
I had no idea that he was like the blues player that he is. And
Oh,
then I
he's
was like,
amazing.
oh my gosh, this guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, immediately became a huge John Mayer fan.
Yeah, very distinct like voice on the
Yeah,
guitar also,
yeah,
like both singing and like playing.
yeah, yeah. With lots of Hendrix vibes. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
he's got definitely some Hendrix in him.
What
Um,
was your first concert? Because I
oh,
love that
mine.
question too. Yeah.
Mine was Rush.
Oh, wow, that's a
Yeah,
good show.
yeah. Back in 1981, I saw them in Detroit for Moving Pictures. So
Oh, great.
yeah,
That was another band that I grew up with.
yeah, I was a huge Rush fan. Like
Yeah.
I knew my friends would tell you that like uh, at a time I could sort of hit some of the high notes like Geddy Lee,
Yeah.
not quite,
Yeah.
and not quite in tune, So
Yeah, yeah.
it was probably horrible for them driving with me, but
Yeah.
um, you know, but uh,
Yeah.
I knew all the lyrics. Like I just could just rattle them off and
Yeah.
write them if I needed to. I just loved Rush. I was
Yeah. I
infatuated.
remember the song The Trees
Yeah,
really
yeah,
left a mark on me
yeah,
when I was younger.
yeah,
Um, yeah, Rush.
yeah.
My wife's first show was Meatloaf.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Bad out of hell.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny because that's a question I love asking people also. So I like that you asked that question.
Yeah, you got to do it. Now,
Yeah.
so do you remember the very first time you performed live? And what did you take away
Yes.
from that?
Yeah, I think was that the first one? I think it was. It was at a Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf in Surprise, Arizona. I did a double header, two sets back to back.
Wow.
I think my parents still have like that original show poster. I had like had a friend of mine take some photos. I was, I think I was a freshman in high school, and I had written and recorded my own EP. I had a little like digital 8-track
Yeah,
recorder, and just like I did it. I just like jumped in and recorded this album, and it was called Sensing Change. That was the name of the album.
oh, nice.
I did all the art, all the production, everything.
That's
And
cool.
it's like a little cringy to listen to now, but it's like it's good. I'm
Yeah.
happy I did it. So anyway, that was yeah, I just remember playing that show, and then I remember distinctly in high school like not I couldn't wait for the time that I could just go to a show without my parents like chaperoning me.
Oh,
That was the thought because I would be on all these bars and my parents had to bring me to them, you know. So
yeah, yeah.
um yeah, that's what I remember taking away from that first show. I was like, oh, my parents here, like I just
Yeah.
want to be.
I just want to be here by myself and do my
Yeah,
own
but like
thing.
they were I mean, they're super supportive, so
Yeah,
loving. I mean, I feel so blessed. And they were, always fanning the spark, just
that's
like
cool.
really
Yeah, that's awesome.
pushing me along.
That's very cool. So, I know you mentioned that you've got new music. You mentioned it at the show and just a little bit ago.
Yeah.
Uh, that'll be out the beginning of the year. Is that going to be a full album's worth, a EP worth, and when will that be?
Yeah, it's gonna be 5 songs. I don't have an official date yet. We're just finishing up like the last mixes. I'm gonna get
Hmm.
it mastered here soon. Finishing up the artwork. Um, I'm just trying to like coordinate. I'm trying to be a little bit more intentional and coordinated. every release I've tried to do a little bit better in terms of getting the word out there.
Right.
My plan is the like third week of January to start releasing this music. It's 5 songs, and I'm thinking to do it like a week after the next, like
Oh,
once a
cool.
week
Yeah.
until all 5 songs are released.
Uh-huh.
That's my hope.
Excellent.
That's the plan.
We
And
have
yeah, I'm
any physical media with that, or
physical media means like some videos and things like
CDs?
that.
Like CDs or
I probably
tape?
want to print. I My intention was to print vinyl on the last album, and I just kind of never got around to it. I have the scans and I have the like masters and everything for it, but I
Right.
just never did it. So I'm still planning to do that. Um, Especially because the album art's so nice, and I'm excited about the art for this EP. Each individual song is going to have its own album art, and then there's going to be like a either a comp like a what's the word I'm looking for? Not compilation, but you know what I'm talking about.
Composition?
Yeah, like a full
Theme?
composition. Yeah, like just like a putting all the art together. There's like
Yeah.
some
Oh,
concepts we're working on right now.
right.
I
Who's
don't know.
doing the art, by the way, since that's something I care about very much.
Yeah, her name is Janaki. So she's a
Okay.
friend of ours,
Awesome.
artist out of Texas. She lives here though in Michigan, and so
Nice.
yeah, she's doing the art. Super excited. There's yeah gonna be because the EP is gonna be called No Coins Needed, um, which is gonna be the title track of the album,
Awesome.
so or of the EP.
Excellent. Wow, that sounds
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah. I love that you've got like art for each song too. That's really
yeah,
cool because that's something you don't see very often. At least I
hmm
haven't.
yeah,
Where it's typically just a cover that somebody's created for the entire collection, but not necessarily individual. So I think that's kind of fun.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
My plan is I have videos pretty much for every song on the album. Some like live performance videos, some just like lyric videos, but I want to try and make it multimedia and just
Yeah.
have, yeah, the physical art,
Yep.
make some prints on it. Like just, I've always loved when music is like that, when it just like incorporates
Yeah.
multiple disciplines
Yeah.
into one project.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, gig is that's what it's all about, really. To me, is
Totally.
like it's like the music and everything that's inspired by it, right?
Yeah.
All the kind of visual, the um, any type of sensation, emotional or physical that you can get off of it. That's what I think is
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
very cool. Well, that's it. That's exciting. And so,
Yeah.
how about shows? What's the outlook as far as your playing out?
Yeah, at this moment, nothing's booked. We're in the process of doing that. Talking to your friends out in
Well, yep,
Manchester,
Manchester. Yep.
and then have a few song circles that I'm planning with a few local musicians. Uh, there was an artist that I met the other night at North Star Lounge, Annie. Also, I don't know if it's the same Annie that you had seen the other night.
I'm not sure.
What's
Uh,
Annie's last name? Do you remember?
Caps. Caps. Capps.
I think it may be Annie
Oh,
Caps. Anyway, there's a few different artists, like local musicians, that I'm wanting to set up some, yeah, song circles with
yeah.
here in the local area, maybe some things out in Grand Rapids. And then, yeah, my hope and intention is to set up some tours. I know we're going to do like an East Coast tour, doing some things in Vermont, New York, Philadelphia, down in Florida as well.
Wow.
So just like a few shows on the East Coast. Would love to do some things on the West Coast. So all that's kind of
Yeah.
in the
Planning
flow right
stages.
now, setting those
Awesome.
things up.
Yeah, that's exciting,
Yeah.
man. Excellent. Um, so, what was I gonna say? Oh, shoot. Oh, so if kind of going back into like the talking about musical influences, is there a particular like musical hero or somebody you really admired that y if you could talk to them,
Mm.
what would you like to ask them? What would you like to talk to them about?
Mm. Hmm. It'd be very interesting to speak with John Coltrane,
Nice.
actually.
Yeah.
Um, Specifically because like, yeah, especially the way he innovated jazz music, just
Yeah.
music in general. Also how much spirituality influenced his music as well.
Yeah.
So it'd be very interesting to speak with him. Um, hmm.
Can you think of what you know, if what you would like to talk to him about? Like his songwriting or just his
Yeah, I'd probably talk to him
influences?
about like improvisation. That's a skill I've always like really admired and to some extent have dabbled, but I don't feel as proficient in the language of improvisation as I would like to.
Yeah.
So not that I would like, can you teach me how to improvise
Yeah.
John Coltrane?
Yeah.
But like just kind of conceptually, how does he think about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, how does he approach it? Um, I think too, like some of the classical music, like Bach, like it would be amazing to speak to Bach
Yeah.
and like just kind of under like I mean just another level of like
Yeah.
process and
I
approach.
think I would be afraid because I would just
I
like,
yeah, I mean
what the
with
fuck am
all
I
these
gonna say to
people,
this
I
guy?
yeah, with all these people I'd feel like a complete, you know,
Yeah.
like boob just trying to like what do I talk about, you know?
Right.
I'm just like this
Yeah.
random guy, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, if we're doing magical thinking, those are people
Right.
I'd
There
love
you
to
go.
talk to.
Right. Yeah. They sit down, they have a coffee with you, and you go, "Oh,
Oh
how's the
yeah,
weather today?" You know?
I feel like yeah, that'd be great. I would just love to like even just to see. I had thought about that recently, kind of a bit of a tangent, but thinking of music before recorded music, and still I think the experience is available when you see music live.
Hmm.
There's something unique about that experience that's not happening anywhere else. It's just happening in front of you in that moment. Nowadays is like you can have a major artist performing a concert and probably that same song is being streamed elsewhere,
Hmm.
right? Which is not it's not any one way, but thinking back to those times when like music was happening either with a family in a living room, in a chamber, at a church, like music was happening when it was happening. That's the only place that it was ever happening,
Yeah.
which is pretty phenomenal to think about.
Right.
So I just think about even being able to see some of these musicians live,
Yeah.
um, and like, yeah, the impression that that would leave
Yeah.
on the heart.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's kind of one of the appeals to me of like local music is that it is that
yeah,
way, right? I mean, you
totally.
can still experience what the artist has recorded, but
Yeah,
you have an opportunity to like, you know, see it as it's sometimes being, being made or,
yeah,
modifying it. But yeah,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. I've been thinking about because going to a few open mics recently, like at North Star and also at the Arc, their
Hmm.
open stage, and just appreciating
Yeah.
like human beings getting together, like at whatever skill level,
Yeah. Yeah.
but just like human beings getting together and like playing their heart out and just like
Right.
the magic of that it's very exciting to watch just to
Yeah.
watch like yeah watch the very human activity of music making.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Ananda, thank you so much for being on Fans with Bands.
Yeah,
I've got one last question. Well, actually, I've
okay,
got two questions because we're entering the
is it
holiday
the
season.
pizza topping question?
It is.
Okay, good. I'm
Pine
ready.
pineapple or no pineapple on pizza?
I can jive with pineapple.
All
I'm down
right.
with it.
Uh,
I'm not like a pizza purist.
all
You know, there's
right.
like, I mean, there's like qualities of a pizza that I want to make sure are intact. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be too bready. You got to have the right ratio of like sauce and cheese.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm not a purist. Put some pineapple on my pizza.
All
Let's
right.
go.
Awesome. And the other one is sort of holiday related, uh,
Yeah.
and that is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Die Hard. I haven't seen Die Hard,
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, that's going to
so
be
that's my homework.
there you go.
That is that with what's
Bruce
his name?
Willis.
Bruce Willis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it a Christmas movie? Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna watch that movie this week, and then I'll let you know.
All right. Awesome.
I'll let you know if it qualifies.
There you go. That'll be good. I can add it as the postscript on there.
Yeah, yeah. Edit. Ananda
Yeah.
said yes.
Awesome. Well, Ananda, thank you again so much for
Yeah.
being on Bands of Bands. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Many thanks to Ananda Murari for joining me on this episode of Bands with Bands. I love getting a chance to talk with Ananda and hearing about his journey in music. Ananda has a bunch of new music coming out in early 2025, actually in a few weeks maybe, called No Coins Needed. He also has some local shows as well as an East Coast tour coming up in 2025. See the show notes for all the details and links. Bands are nothing without you, the fans. Purchasing music and merchandise is critical to their survival. If you can help out your favorite bands, please do. If you're in Michigan, consider following the Playing in Detroit Area Tonight and SE for Southeast Michigan Music Facebook pages. They are fantastic places for bands and bands to support each other and share our combined love of music. Thank you all so much for listening. Be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast service to get each and every episode of Fans with Bands. Spread the word by rating the show, telling your friends, telling your neighbors, telling your family, telling your priest, tell everyone, and leave a comment. We want to hear what you think. You can keep in touch by following us on social media. This is a Life in Michigan production. Until next time, be well and kick out the jam.